Well, the powers that be that run the college football playoff are meeting this week in Texas and making decisions about 2025 and beyond. For Iowa football, it's about getting better for 2025 and beyond, 2026 through the high school ranks, through the transfer portal, and plenty of additions and a few subtractions as well. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football, our weekly Iowa show with Mr. Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, of course, and get on over there too from the Hawkeye of the Storm on a daily basis. Check out Corey's work and much to talk about this week. Corey, how you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, there's lots to talk about. I mean, we're talking, mid to late April, and there's this news pouring in almost every day, and football's throwing its hat in the ring with the portal, which is good. There's some good news there with the addition of by all accounts, a very good, solid pickup. I mean, different levels. So whenever you talk about changing, D2 to D1, obviously you can't be dogmatic about what the end results are going to be. But Iowa's had some good recruiting momentum here the last few days, and we get to see everything culminated on Saturday with the open practice. It's not a scrimmage, it's a practice inside Kinnick, and that will wrap up spring football, and summer will be here before you know it. So active time of the year, and the portal's just nuts. It's just crazy how these things have overlapped.
Comments and questions are welcome, folks. We appreciate your contributions as well. You can use the super chat function there in the chat. And again, we take your questions. All right, I guess we'll just run them down top to bottom. We've got this offensive tackle out of Ferris State, and maybe the most impressive aspect of this for those of us who have not seen Ferris State play a whole lot of football recently is that USC was in the running for this Bryce George, the offensive tackle.
Yeah, as was Cal, I'm sure other Power 4 schools, and I don't know that he completed a visit there. I did talk to Bryce briefly. We're going to get him on a show here at some point, but I talked to him briefly after his commitment. And he's intriguing just because it appears that he's what you'd call a late bloomer because he filled into that position once he got to college. I don't know that anybody recruited him as an O-lineman. He was recruited, played a lot of tight end and defensive end in high school, and he's gained 50, 60 pounds since he got to Ferris State. He's like 6'5 and a half, 315. He's coming in. I mean, physically, he's ready to go. And, I always say I'm not an O-line expert by any means, and I don't think there's a whole lot of people, frankly, that do shows like this that are O-line experts. I mean, just to be quite frank. So, like, if somebody starts acting like some authority, I'd ask for their credentials, first of all. So that's why I love asking people like Don Patterson, although Don will even say he's not an O-line expert, and he was an offensive, he's an offensive coordinator. But just because you're a coordinator doesn't mean you know much about offensive line play. So, yes, you defer back to Barnett, defer back to Kirk Ferentz. They should be recruiting well and be able to identify talent at the high school level and in the transfer portal because of those guys' credentials. But the other aspect of this is they have had some misses in the portal. I would consider to be misses in the portal at offensive tackle. Not specifically. Barnett's had at least one that I can think of off the top of my head. But even guys like, I bring up Coy Cronk. Somebody asked me this other day, like, hey, day one starter. Is that what Bryce George is? And my response is, maybe. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Hey, by the way, he's not here till May, so he's not like he's immediately hopping over and being able to complete spring practice. So he won't be here for any of spring ball. He'll get here in May, be a part of fall camp, and maybe he'll end up being their left tackle. Maybe he'll end up being their right tackle. If he's their right tackle, then I don't know who the left tackle is because I don't know that Jennings Dunker. I don't think you just move him over to left tackle. I don't know that that'd be a good idea. But again, I'm not a line expert. But it's a good pickup. Other people liked him. By the way, Coy Cronk, he was a multi-year starter. He started like 40 games or something nuts at Indiana. And he came to Iowa, I believe, during the COVID season. And yeah, he struggled with some injuries, but he never did much of anything at Iowa. I mean, really didn't. And I don't think he's stuck in the NFL. When he committed to Iowa out of the transfer portal or whatever you called that, the transfer thing back then, I remember saying, like, wow, great resume. Like, this guy's decorated. He's a plug-and-play guy. Let's go. It did not work out. And Dejon Parker's another one a couple of years ago. Get him from Saginaw Valley State, another D2 kid. I know Virginia had initially enrolled at Virginia out of the transfer portal. Iowa was able to flip him from Virginia. He was on the Virginia website. So he was wanted by Power 4 schools. And great kid, like one of my favorite players that I've been able to get to know a little bit as an Iowa football player. Great young man. I'm guessing he's doing great things in life. Could never gain enough traction to see the field at Iowa. They've had some success in the portal. I mean, like Rusty Feth, he played a lot at Iowa. He transferred over from Miami, Ohio, and Barnett had connections to him. But I'm just saying it's not always an exact science. And anecdotally, I look back at some of the recent additions out of the portal along that O-line, and it makes me think maybe it's even more of an inexact science for offensive linemen. So I hope it works out. By all accounts, Bryce George really good at Ferris State. That's a dominant program. They've won multiple national championships since he's been there. I mean, they just dominated Valdosta State in their national title game a few months ago by like 30. So they're a dominant force at that level. One of the best offenses in D2, one of the best run games in D2. So he checks all those boxes, and it looks like he's got hot feet, big, strong. So hope for the best. Hopefully he's a plug-and-play guy. They can put at left tackle. You keep Jennings Dunker at right tackle, and then you worry about the two guards.
Yeah, it's something similar from jumping AAA to the major leagues, where some guys, they are well equipped to make that leap, and then trying to watch it on tape and trying to project has to be a difficult thing, especially at offensive line. And
that's what's unique about this too, right, Mark? Because we keep talking about how amateurism doesn't exist. And so this is basically professional sports. But in pro sports, in the MLB and the NBA, the NBA, you've got G League, you've got 10-day contracts. You can send guys back and forth during the season. The way this is set up now, like in order to get a guy like this, you got to pay him for basically, I don't know what Bryce George got NIL wise, but I'm sure he got some money. So you got to ensure he gets some money via your NIL. But then, like, that's it. That's just him. He's there. And you can't send him back down and be like, okay, you're going back to the G League. You're going back to D2. Let's go pick this guy. Like, you can't do that. He's only got 1 year left. So the eligibility thing comes into play. So, it puts coaches in a very difficult position. And there's risk reward with all of it. But I think that's a good illustration. There's a little less risk bringing a guy up from, the minor leagues or from the G League in, NBA, because you can always send them back, assuming they're on a 10-day contract or a two-way.
Yeah, and so there's that selection, which again, that's an all or nothing proposition, as you just outlined, because it's a 1 year of eligibility. And if he doesn't come through as not necessarily a starter, but a starter or one of the first guys off the bench, then it's a miscalculation. And you ran down a few from the last 5 years or so.
And I was really excited about Dejon. I was really excited about Dejon Parker. Again, checked all the boxes mentally, physically. He's a huge dude. I don't know why it didn't work out. I have no idea. And maybe he may have dealt with some injuries. Injuries are the big things that can totally, especially get 1 year out of a guy like this. Like I don't know what they paid him, but like all these guys are getting money to go play a year somewhere for basketball. What if they get hurt? It's not, again, that's why it's so different than pro sports. You don't sign guys for 1 year in pro sports, not guys that have, that are big money, big dollar people. So the big dollar people in the college right now are oftentimes 1 to 2 year guys. Injuries can totally throw that whole plan for a loop.
So to me, long term, at least on the surface, the next guy we're going to talk about, the 4-star out of Illinois in the 2026 class, Gene Riordan is how I will pronounce his name. But looking at the rankings on him, he's a top 300 player. He's a top 10 player in the state of Illinois. He's another offensive line commit, which this class has been heavy on offensive line commits early on. So obviously having him for what could turn out to be a 4-year career, and considering how highly he's thought of at this point and scouted, that's a huge pickup.
Huge pickup. And yeah, like you said, right now it appears that Mr. Barnett is doing pretty good on the recruiting trail. He's been a pretty good recruiter since he got here. I know that the whole Caden Proctor thing happened. I don't know that you totally blame him for that. I think most Hawkeye fans resent Proctor for what he did. But Reardon's a kid who, it's a little bit different because he's going to have to gain some weight, obviously. But he'll be a kid who will be expected to one day be a starter. And I don't know where he projects. I know he's listed on most recruiting sites as an offensive tackle, and he's already 6'5". He's a class of 26 guy, so he's got another year in high school. But yeah, I mean, you're talking Auburn, Penn State wanted him, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Illinois. So that a mix of some good schools from almost every high major conference. So yeah, I mean, credit Hinsdale is another suburb of Chicago. They've done very well in that area of the country. There's obviously a lot of talent. It's a rich area when you talk about Chicago and the outskirts of Chicago. But for a long time, I've thought, well, maybe Iowa will have to start going other places if Brett Bielema gets it going in Illinois. Brett's got it going, but I don't know if there's just enough talent there that the wealth can be spread around, or if it's just not the success of that program and Northwestern are not synonymous enough or overlap enough yet to where it makes that big of a difference. But they've done a nice job in that area of the country. So excited about him. As you said, top 100 or top 300 guy, according to the 247 composite, maybe even a top 20. It looks like 247's got him as an interior guy. Like I said, Rivals has him listed as a tackle, top 15 guy overall in Illinois by 247. So, the recruiting thing is sort of like the D2 thing minus the physical side. You just don't know, is this kid going to be able to, I mean, he's 275, so he's bigger than like Bryce George was coming out of high school, but assuming he fills in the way you want him to, and it doesn't affect the fundamentals, the feet, all that goes into playing, especially outside part of the line, it checks all the boxes. And I don't know him personally. That this will be someone that we'll have to reach out to and try to get him on a show as well. But yeah, they've gotten a couple of guys here in the last week that have had a nice bevy of offers nationally.
This is what jumps out to me in regards to the separation of these rankings, is that 247 Sports at 42nd on the interior, 14th rated in the state versus number 9 in the composite. So for that composite at number 21 at his position versus 42, for that jump to occur in the composite, where do Rivals and On3 have him?
So Rivals has got him, like I said, they list him as an offensive tackle, and they've got him as the 81st best tackle. So you might be able to go ahead and click on 247 Sports Composite, and it should give you, I know On3 does, but 247, does it not let you click on that? No. I can tell you here in a second.
Oh, maybe here. Let's see. No, that's going right to the top of the board.
I'll grab it from, yeah. So On3's also got him listed as an interior guy. And their industry ranking has him as a top 300 kid, top 20 interior guy, top 10 in the state of Illinois. And it looks like they've got their I don't think they've I can find this out here, but looks like that's all premium now. So yeah, I don't know. I'll have to watch him a little bit more. I haven't been able to talk to Coach Patterson. Every time we get an offensive line commit, every time Iowa gets a commit from the offensive line, I always send it over to him right away and say, hey, what can you tell me by reading between the lines? And I don't know anything about Hinsdale. I do know it's suburban Chicago, and Iowa's been very successful there. I know this kid was highly touted. And the 26 class, yeah, I mean, these two classes, you add in Bryce George out of the portal, it's one of their probably 2 or 3 most successful recruiting positions here in the last year, I'd say.
We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Keep in mind that you can catch the audio of this over on Corey's audio platforms, all the major audio providers. If you want to catch the audio, keep in mind we got this baby available, Disputed National Champions. It's a great read for the off season, looking through the 1990s, and not just a historical book, but putting all the seasons of the 1990s into the current college football playoff format and beyond. And again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, much being discussed this week among the powers that be concerning the college football playoff and changes that could be coming as soon as 2025.
Okay, so I just got the numbers. So 247's got him. All these rankings show him as an interior guy, my understanding. Although then I click on rivals. So I'll just share my screen real quick so people can see. This is on three's recruiting industry comparison. So you see his ratings by each. There's some. Like I say, I think this one is because the bottom one there, rivals, it says 81. But my understanding is they're rating him as an outside guy. So every other major service, On3, 247, and ESPN have him as a top 40 interior offensive lineman. And
well, look at On3 compared to the other ones.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know why that is.
Like I said, love him.
They've got him as the number. They've got him as the number one Illinois kid. That's interesting.
They've got him as the 67th best player in the country.
Yeah. Wait. What's the, look at the industry. You add that in and calculate that with measuring all these other sites, and they've got them at 261 for their industry ranking. So what are the On3 guys saying that everybody else is not? They got them at 67. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Let's scroll down here. Will it let me make sure that's accurate? I'm not seeing him here. 67?
That's what it said. 67.
I'm not seeing him here.
Yeah.
Maybe this list hasn't updated since obviously once a guy commits, sometimes those rankings will change. But yeah, that's interesting.
So Corey, you also let me know before we started recording that there was a wide receiver selection for the 26 class.
Yeah, another kid with some really good offers. A little bit undersized from a perspective of what I was targeted. I keep saying this. You can see the calculated approach that they have taken with. Real quick, Buck Wild for Kirk to leave. the user in the chat. Don't forget Kirk's buddy Barnett lost Nick Brooks. Knowing what I know about that situation, I don't believe that you put that on George Barnett personally. That's my feeling on the Nick Brooks situation. So if you're going to blame him for anything, maybe put some blame on him for the Caden Proctor thing the first time around. Second time around, I'm not going to blame anybody. Not anybody within the program. I just think that's a messy situation. But yeah, let me pull up. So Iowa got a commitment on. Let's see, was this over the weekend? I believe it was Sunday evening. They got a commitment from Florida receiver DeAndre Smith. He had offers from the likes of Miami, Florida, Michigan State, Indiana, Maryland, Louisville, Pitt, Central Florida, Tulane, and a bunch of other schools. And give some credit to Coach Budmeyer. He's coaching the receivers right now, and he's part of those recruiting efforts. I think I would have to think most receivers are coming to play in the Tim Lester system because of the success Tim Lester's had. And I'll give you an idea of DeAndre Smith. Go ahead. If you had something.
I'm not finding his profile. DeAndre Smith out of Florida?
Neptune Beach, Florida. You want me to share my screen here?
Sure.
So, Neptune Beach, Florida. Duncan U. Fletcher High School in that area of the country. On3's got him as a 3-star, 150 receiver in the country. And you see these other offers. Yeah, rankings have always confounded me. I mean, you compare somebody like we just looked at Reardon, you compare his offer list with his ranking, and you're like, okay, what's the discrepancy here with On3 versus all these other services? And then DeAndre Smith, you're like, man, these are some really good offers in some schools that have had really good success offensively and with receiver, like a Maryland, like a Michigan State. UCF plays in one of the better offensive conferences in the country in the Big 12, Miami, but yet he's listed relatively low. He's 5'11", 175. He's part of the 26 class as well. So yeah, I mean, watching his tape, he looks similar to the other receivers Iowa has targeted. They're not focused nearly as much on getting guys who are big and long framed and, big hands. Not that there's not a place for those guys. I think you're going to see Iowa have a guy or two like that on the roster every year to play that prototypical X in certain situations. But I think you're going to see more situational football with Tim Lester as he gets the pieces he wants in place. And he's doing that now. That process has been sped up because of the portal, and fair enough. But I think you're going to see more situational offense with receivers, and that means the default may often be guys like DeAndre Smith, KJ Parker, or they bring in the kid this year from Chattanooga. You got Seth Anderson, I know he was brought in under the previous staff, but he's got good speed. Finally starting to see, I know he's 26, but you're starting to see a group of players that Lester is forming that he wants. And they don't look, at least at receiver, they don't look, and quarterback, frankly, they don't look anything like they did under Brian Ferentz. And that's a good thing.
We've got some numbers here for DeAndre Smith. This past season caught 39 passes, 473 yards at about 12 yards per reception. And they popped an ad over his stats on me. Okay, again, 39 for 473, 12 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns, caught 3 touchdowns the previous season on 18 receptions.
And for Kelvin in the chat, he brings up how Iowa was a little thin in that 25 class, Allgaier being the staple. And I'm not certainly not, just like I'm not going to anoint anybody before they get here. I'm not going to cast aspersions on a young kid. But I'm not as high on Allgaier, Lucas Allgaier, coming out of high school as I know a lot of services are just watching him. Again, not an O-line expert, and Iowa's missed some out of high school. It's not just the portal. They've had 4-star kids that have just not worked out for various reasons. Tyler Endress, David Cobb. I mean, you go down the list, they've had a lot of those guys that have come through the program, never see the field. And Isaac, James Rezar. Can we address this question in the chat by Isaac that just popped up? This is interesting. I'm glad he bring this up. So I reached out to a source here in the last couple of weeks. So Isaac, for people on audio that can't see the question, Isaac wants to know about James Rezar, where he ended up. So this is interesting. And I have not reached out to Iowa specifically, partly because we get maybe somebody else has, and I don't take time to read a lot of other stuff, but we'll get Iowa this weekend, right? We'll get the live spring, and we'll get some media availability, and we'll be able to see these guys, in action in jerseys. Most guys will be in pads, but James Rezar was moved from quarterback to receiver, brought in originally as a quarterback. I don't know what Brian Ferentz saw, with James Rezar, but it's clear Lester and company wanted him to switch over to receiver, and it sounded like last year Rezar was not interested in doing that. I mean, he did it for a while, entered the portal during this past offseason before the bowl game. But what was unique about it, I remember standing down on the field, and who was I talking to? I think I was talking to Kelvin Bell on the sideline before Iowa, Missouri. So, of course, he's a D-line coach. But I remember seeing number 10 roll by, and I remember saying, is that James Rezar down here? And the fact of the matter is there were guys that stuck around. And everything's changing. So, even a year to 2 years ago, if you enter the portal, in general, I remember this kind of being the rule of thumb a couple of years ago. You didn't stick with the team unless, and Kirk team to make an exception with graduates. So there were graduates that, like Dallas Cradith, I remember he played in a bowl game after entering the portal. But now it seems like maybe the tide has turned, it shifted, because there's so many guys entering the portal. And some of these guys, I don't know the reasoning why Kirk would change his perspective or why Iowa would change their perspective, but I know guys like Rezar stuck with the team through the bowl game. So my assumption at the time was, okay, he's sticking with Iowa through the bowl game, but he'll be off. He was on the spring prospectus. So as far as I'm aware, he's still in the portal and has not selected a school. Okay. That's my understanding. He's not transferred anywhere. And I reached out to somebody in the program here 2 weeks ago or less, and I was told, yeah, he's still around. He's still here in the football facility. So I don't know. I don't know how that works, how Iowa's handling situations like that. Here's my guess. And this is a guess, and we'll maybe get some more clarity on this here later this week. But my guess is there could be situations, maybe that's the case with Rezar, where a guy doesn't have a home, is still weighing options outside of Iowa. And since Iowa doesn't have to have their roster trimmed down to the 105 yet, let them stick around. Let them stick around. If they have a scholarship open for them, let them stick around. What's interesting, though, is this is the weird thing. He's not on the Iowa website. So he's on the spring prospectus that we got from Iowa, but he's not on HawkeyeSports.com on the active online roster. So I don't have an answer for you, Isaac. That's just what I know about it. I've not reached out to. I don't know that I've ever had a conversation with James Rezar, maybe at Media Day one year, but I've not reached out to him or anybody else about it. So maybe we'll get some. I'm sure we'll get some clarity here later this week on, because if he's there, he's there. If he's not, I'm guessing he's not on the team. But he's the one guy that entered the portal during this past window, to my understanding, that has not found a home.
Based on the last I read from Judge Claudia Wilkin, who's overseeing the hearing with the NCAA and the can't think of the term, but anyway, the ruling that's going to come down, that's going to govern college football and college athletics going forward, is that she is dead set against a hard and fast cut to 105 on July 1st. She would like to grandfather in anyone who's currently a scholarship athlete or on a roster, not just in football, across the board, and then, grandfather in the current group of athletes as being protected, or having some type of staged reduction that will take several years to ease the issue with the current athletes getting cut. So apparently we're not going to see that on July 1st.
That's been decided?
She's the judge overseeing the case, and she does not want that to be.
That's so hard. That's so
this.
difficult. Schools have been cutting, though, for the last 3 months in anticipation of this. So how do you go back and say, well, that doesn't seem fair either? Like do one thing or don't do it. I don't know. Interesting situation. Can I get your thoughts on something real quick? So Brendan Sullivan has reportedly been contacted by Michigan. Did you see this?
Yes.
Reached out by Michigan, by Virginia Tech. I think, was it Pete Nakos or somebody with On3 had him connected to Tulane as well. Now, that doesn't mean, I think he's visiting Tulane this week. But the quote from Pete Nakos, let me find the quote from Pete Nakos. This is what Nakos wrote last week. There aren't a lot of great quarterbacks in the portal with proven starting experience that Michigan would be looking for. Brendan Sullivan is one of the few quarterbacks in the portal next to Steve Angeli. Is that how you pronounce it?
Angeli. Yep.
Angeli, really?
Yes.
Who could fit the role for what Michigan's looking for is experience and can compete for the starting job. I know everybody loves what Bryce has done, but there's also the reality that Sullivan has more college starting experience. Do you really think Brendan Sullivan could end up starting at Michigan this year, Mark? Do you believe that's a possibility?
I think that the two of us are about as qualified as anyone to produce a video talking about Brendan Sullivan and a fit at Michigan.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what I'm going to do.
I see our guys over at Mason Brew wrote that they don't believe he'd be competing for a starting role, that he'd be coming in for depth purposes. So I don't know why. I mean, he's not going anywhere unless he thinks he can start. I mean, my understanding is he left on very good terms, and why he's got 1 year left. He would have, maybe I was going to say Harbaugh. What's the guy? Moore. Maybe Moore looks at him and says, "Yeah, we think you could start day one." I sure hope he doesn't go there and then not play. I want a success for him. I think he gave Iowa what he could in a year, and so that's why if he goes to Tulane, I don't know what their quarterback situation looks like, but they've had a good offense in past years. That would be a good type of place, a high G5, if he could be kind of guaranteed a starting role.
And that's about as high as you can get in G5. Tulane's starting quarterback, Darian Mensah, left to go to Duke.
For Duke, yeah. He got a big old bag to go there, right? You got bag.
Yes, you got a bag. And you talk about a bag, the biggest bag possibly in college football besides, this Nico business. But obviously he got his stock plummeted about 40%, and his foolish father and agent didn't anticipate that. I could have easily told them that. But anyway, getting back to the Michigan situation with Brendan Sullivan, you've got a situation with Bryce Underwood, who's a true freshman there, who's making all sorts of money in NIL. They signed the Fresno State starting quarterback over the last couple of years, Mikey Keene, to be the supposed bridge to Bryce Underwood. But we're hearing, first of all, Mikey Keene's hurt. Secondly, Bryce Underwood could be just so good that he's going to start from day one. But with a Mikey Keene injury, maybe that's why Brendan Sullivan's attractive to Michigan.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. And Michigan's on the schedule, right? No, they're not on the schedule. They are on the schedule? I'll have to pull up the schedule. But yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be something if even if they're not on the schedule? Let's see. They are not on the schedule.
Oh, I guess not. Okay.
You can still play. Hey, maybe they'll meet in the Big Ten championship game. You laugh at that? You laugh at that? Is that a joke?
You were the one laughing.
Is it a joke to even presume that Iowa has a shot at making a Big Ten championship game? I've said it before. It's going to be it's going to be easier to make the playoff. I said that. I think we both said that when the new arrangement was made. We said it's going to be far easier to make a playoff than it will be for Iowa to make. Far easier to make a playoff than the Big Ten championship game.
Yes.
And I stand by that.
Indiana,
good example. And with the schedule, I think they have a shot at winning 9 games. Somebody asked me that. Somebody came up to me over the weekend. Shout out to Seth and Alex that came up to me over the weekend and said they loved our conversation about Little Debbie's and Hostess treats. They loved it. They want more of that. So although 90% of the people who watched this probably hated it and tuned off as soon as we started, we have fans with the Little Debbie snacks. But anyways, they asked me, one of them asked me, what's the win total? That's always that's the number one off-season question people ask. What's the win total for this coming year? And I think it's a wider range, given the schedule and given some of there's a little bit of, I think, uncertainty among some fans based on what Iowa lacked. I don't think people know how to kind of digest what they saw defensively last year. You can have as much confidence in Phil Parker as you want, but there's the draft's going to be interesting here. Draft's coming up in a few days. That's something we haven't talked about. That's something that, will Iowa guys just not, maybe they won't have as many guys drafted as we anticipated. And that may tell us that maybe they weren't as talented at the top. If they get a bunch of guys drafted, then I'll still ask the same questions I did. Why weren't they as good defensively last year during much of the season? They lost that Michigan State game in a large part due to defense. They lost the UCLA game in large part due to defense. They had the quarterback problems in those games as well. But, I mean, the defensive backfield could not stop runs down the field or shots over the top against Michigan State, who, by the way, couldn't do anything against anybody else all year, Aiden Childs. So I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see how this pans out. There's going to be uncertainty. People are excited about quarterback. The schedule's difficult. They're younger at a lot of places defensively. And then with the portal, that just brings so much uncertainty everywhere because it's not just your team that has changed, it's everybody else as well. So, yeah, lots of questions. And I'm thankful they don't play UCLA because I watched Iowa get pants last year by UCLA with a mediocre quarterback. And as much as the Nico thing, I haven't listened to a whole lot of what you've had to say on that situation. I think I probably have an idea of how you feel about the Nico situation. But as much as that was ridiculous, he's still a really good talent, really good player. So, Foster, I don't really blame them. If I don't know what they paid him, I don't know what the end number was, but do you really blame a second-year head coach who needed some energy, needed a jolt? Is his younger brother Madden? I know he committed to play for them yesterday. Is he a highly touted kid?
I don't know that, but what's interesting is that his younger brother had committed to play for them, decommitted, committed to Arkansas, and then now with his brother on the roster, recommits back to UCLA. They have definitely upgraded at quarterback. And
it looks like his younger brother from Long Beach, 4-star recruit, top 25 quarterback nationally, had offers from a bunch of schools, including Miami, Auburn, Ole Miss. So yeah, it's Tennessee. I don't know what they're paying him if they're paying. What I've been told about Iowa is that Iowa's not paying a lot of kids out of high school. So I don't know if places like UCLA can afford to pay a kid like Madden, a 4-star quarterback, but are you kind of getting 2 for the price of 1, at least initially? I don't blame them for that. It will be interesting. I think it's a plus for the conference. I don't think there's any. Do you see that as a bad thing for the whole Nico situation? To me, worked out well for all parties besides the Nico party. Like financially, it didn't work out for them because he got bad advice. Was probably thought higher of himself than he should have, as did his father and agent. But Tennessee didn't need that. UCLA did need it, and they got it for a cheaper price. And I think it helps the SEC to not have a drama queen, and it helps the Big Ten for a program that was hovering around mediocrity to maybe be a factor this year. How much of a factor, I don't know.
Well, he's a 5-star talent, obviously, as you know, and got to see in the bowl game against Iowa the year before.
Yeah.
And he had a decent season. Now, for as many detractors as he has because of this incident that want to say he's horrible, and I took all those calls, he's not horrible. He's good to decent range after just one season of starting as a redshirt freshman. 19 touchdowns and threw 5 interceptions.
Made a bonehead play in the one game. That's what stands out to me. What game was that where didn't he like run out of bounds as the clock expired?
He did that?
Didn't he do that?
Not that I remember.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
It's possible. But man, he lined up against Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, all sorts of good teams.
Arkansas. They lost 19-14 to Arkansas. I remember he ran out of bounds. He rolled out, ran out of bounds instead of giving his team a shot. They lost 19-14.
I'll have to go back and look at that. I don't recall that. That's
funny
because the previous Tennessee quarterback, Joe Milton, did the same thing against Ole Miss.
Well,
he did.
Maybe our friend, the head coach down there, Heppel, who is a former quarterback, needs to work with his guys a little bit more. Well, he's had some good quarterback. I like Heppel. He'd be the type of guy that I wouldn't mind being. What did I say?
Heppel.
It's Josh Heupel, not Heppel?
Sure. Josh Heupel.
Where did he play college ball?
Oklahoma.
Was he good?
He won a national championship.
Okay. Before my time, right? What year would that have been?
2000.
No, before my.
He wasn't the centerpiece of the offense. It was a defensive oriented team, but he was still the starting quarterback.
Yeah. He's the type of guy I wouldn't mind being the next Iowa coach, maybe. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that would be a great
it's not a step up for him. I'm just saying, former quarter. I like the idea of a former quarterback running the show. It's kind of like Ben McCollum, the new Iowa men's basketball coach. Not the Fran McCaffrey's a former point guard, but there's something about obviously the youth, right? And Josh Heupel's not as young, I don't think, as McCollum. Although I guess he could be if he played in 2000. They're probably about the same age. So anyways, I'm going to go off on a tangent there, but that would be an interesting hire if the Iowa ever had a chance to land somebody like that. We haven't talked. What have we not talked about, Mark? Were those some other topics that we hadn't gotten to?
Yeah, there's all sorts of guys that you threw my way, including the long snapper coming in from Boston College.
Yes, Whirl, Mr. Whirl. His first name, I talked about him the other day. Bryant Whirl. Yeah. Hey, somebody was ripping on him. Somebody started ripping on him. I'm like, are you really going to rip on a transfer long snapper? It's his third school, you dumb pig. It's like, come on. He played D2, transferred up to Wake. He's just trying to succeed. This is his 6th year, and they need a long snapper. Luke Elkin was, I know people maybe laugh at long snapper, but it's an important position. Just ask Nebraska fans. The guy who snaps the ball, there's only 2 guys that snap the ball on every special teams possession, every special teams play, I should say, real true special teams play. And that's, whoever the kicking or punting and the long snapper. So just like on the offense, hey, center, quarterback, those 2 guys better be trustworthy and reliable. Luke Elkin had been phenomenal. Shout out Tyler Kluver, Marshalltown High. He was really good before with the old, what was it? Not the hook. What's the old polecat play that he ran against your Buckeyes in 2017 that he fell down at the 1-yard line? He caught remember that? It was the punter threw it to the long side. He fell down at the 1. They still scored. But anyways, that play will live in infamy. But They needed a long snapper. It sounds like their current long snapper, who's an Iowa kid, has struggled a bit during spring practice, and it's been up and down. So they bring this kid in. He's coming in as a walk-on. I don't know how I feel about that. I know they have a limited number of scholarships, but man, a 6th-year long snapper, I would hope that he's coming here to he's earned a scholarship by now, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe he'll earn one here before the start of the season. But happy for him on that, and happy for Iowa to get some addition to great special teams unit. I mean, they got a chance to be. It's hard for me to rate them against every other special teams unit in the country. I can't imagine a better special teams unit. And I've said that we've been on this show, and I've said that before, Mark. I mean, explain to me a better special teams unit than having Drew Stevens, who may be the best kicker in the country, maybe. He's certainly one of the top 2 or 3. Reese Dakin, who was a freshman last year, was really good. He'd be a year older. And then the best return guy in the country in Caden Weegan. So you need to have a good long snapper and a good holder. And so I don't think you can overlook it. And he was, what was he? Let me pull up. There was something else about him that really stood out to me. My question then became, do they hold on to a second long snapper? And some person that said they knew, I don't know that anybody knows because the roster limits and everything's changing. But somebody said, well, they can't travel with more than one long snapper. That's not true at all. Lots of schools travel with only one long snapper. They may have a guy like a center on call in case that long snapper were to get hurt. But I don't know that what the numbers would suggest across the country as far as how many schools might travel with more than one long snapper. But with the new roster limits, do you have room for 2 long snappers? That seems like a big sacrifice with all the positional needs that a football team has. So I don't know on that. And there was something else. So he was at, I'm sorry, this is school number 4 for him. That's why somebody was ripping him. So he played at a D2 school, transferred to Old Dominion, transferred to Boston College, and transferred to Iowa. He's working his way up. Give him a break. Lay off the kid. Just be happy he's here. He's given Iowa his last year. I found his bio. He also interned at Virginia Tech during a summer where he was at Old Dominion. So I haven't had a chance to talk to Bryant about this yet, but I'll be interested to hear this story. He actually interned at for the Virginia Tech football strength and conditioning program during summer of like 2023 while he was still at Old Dominion. Isn't that interesting and unique?
Yeah, that he would not intern within his own football program.
Maybe there was no opportunity at Old Dominion. He also interned, I believe, at the D2 school he played at previously.
The only reason I kind of roll my eyes when this long snapping situation is brought up, just in general, is over the course of watching all these college football games, and these are not professionals, they're getting there. How often do you see a bad snap? It's so rare. I'm not discounting that this is not a difficult thing to do. I couldn't do it. But it's obviously a skill set that these teams don't have an issue finding someone who can do it.
So you're saying you understand not giving a guy a scholarship to be a long snapper?
I'm just saying that every team in America seems to find a guy that is capable of long snapping because we don't see bad snaps.
Well, yeah, so
ever.
I guess, and you're probably right. I mean, Nebraska's had some problems, haven't they? Didn't we talk about that a couple of weeks ago?
But we're isolating on one school a few years ago.
Well,
so
we are.
That's my point.
I have been told, take it for what you will, I have been told over the last couple of weeks that Iowa has been up and down with long snapping during the spring. So whatever that means. I mean, they got an Iowa kid in there who's not on scholarship, but he is a long snapper, and they've struggled. They have not struggled over the last decade or really. I mean, the name Casey Kreider was brought up. He's made a nice NFL career out of long snapping, and he's a former Hawkeye. So they've had some good long snappers come through the program. Trying to think of the long snapper before I think it was before Kluver, and I'm drawing a blank on him. But so yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they won't put him on scholarship. Maybe there's no expectation. I don't know what everybody else is doing nowadays with special. I do think some specialists deserve a scholarship. And sounds like, by the way, one of Iowa's targets during this offseason was Drew Stevens' younger brother, Jack Stevens, who took a scholarship out at Wazoo. And last I saw, he's expected to be the starting kicker out there in his second year on scholarship for Jimmy Rogers and Wazoo. So those are the things. Like, if there's schools like Washington State that are willing to give a kid a scholarship right away, even though they're playing at a lower level right now, better kickers might choose punters, kickers. They're going to choose to go to some of those other schools if they feel that if it's a financial issue and they feel like they got to wait a couple of years at Iowa, 2 or 3 years to win a role. So and you can't blame school players for that. Who else were we going to talk about besides Bryant?
Well, I'll just say very quickly, even though this is only connected in the long snapping department, I saw a speech given by a guy that could be argued as the best long snapper in the history of the NFL because he played for 14 years. He went to Pro Bowls. He was the first long snapper to be given an extended contract, the first long snapper that was ever traded for. Gave a very interesting talk in which this is serious stuff. His father murdered his mother when he was like 12 years old. And yes, but yeah, other than that, an inspiring story of what he, was able to achieve despite that and so forth. So anyway, back to the football of Iowa. Yeah, well, you mentioned to me that this quarterback, Jeremy Heklinski, I believe he's a Wake Forest product, is visiting.
That's the word. I don't know who had that story first. I'm not on the recruiting beat, but my understanding is he is scheduled to visit this week if he hasn't already. He was originally part of the 2024 class, so he's young. He's undersized. I've not watched a lot of tape of his. He was not recruited at a real high level. According to 247 Sports, his only offers at a high school were Central Florida, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, and Eastern Kentucky. He's listed at 5'11", $185. So I don't know. I really don't even know if there's a connection to Tim Lester in Iowa. But he's a multi-sport athlete. Sounds like he's a mobile guy, a mobile quarterback. They lost Sullivan, and maybe they're anticipating losing somebody else. I don't know why you'd bring him in. I don't know why you'd bring a kid like this in for a visit unless you think you're going to be losing somebody else. So my anticipation is they think they're going to lose someone else, whether it be, I hope it's not Hank Brown and Jimmy Sullivan, because they just got Hank Brown and Jimmy Sullivan. But I would think 4 is enough. Don't you think, Mark? Aren't 4 quarterbacks enough with the new roster limits?
Yeah, that should be able to, as long as you feel comfortable with any of them taking snaps in a meaningful game at some point.
I won't be surprised if Jackson Stratton leaves. And hey, Jackson Stratton came in and played decently well for Iowa in several quarters of play last year. Started against Maryland and won that game. They won that game out in College Park. So, he might have enough on tape where he can go into the transfer portal and at least get interest from a G5, like where he came from Colorado State, where he never really played more than a few snaps. He might have shown enough on tape where he can get a role at a, Miami, Ohio, or a San Diego State and start right away. I mean, that's possible. So I'm not going to sit here and make guesses about his future, but I would not be surprised if someone like Stratton leaves. That, to me, that would make the most sense. If Hank Brown or Jimmy Sullivan leaves, one of those guys, that would be surprising. But guys do it now right away. This kid's doing it. He was part of the 24 class. He's already in the portal.
Yeah. Now, if a Hank Brown or a Jimmy Sullivan sees that that they're buried behind the other and Stratton, then you can see them transferring.
Yeah, that's I guess. I mean, I don't know where Hank Brown is eligibility wise. I know Jimmy Sullivan's a true freshman. Both those guys got here before last year's bowl prep.
I would doubt, considering the talent levels of the guys we just mentioned and what they have done thus far, especially with Brown and Stratton, meaning that they don't have these, long resumes, but they have stepped on the field in meaningful games against conference opponents and played, that there's much separation. I doubt if there's this clear delineation between 2, 3, 4 right now. I would doubt it.
Yeah. Well, you're probably right. Robbie Ashford and Deshaun Purdy. So you got two transfers that transferred into Wake this past offseason. So it sounds like those are the guys that will be starting. So Eklinski's only been there a year, but he apparently wants out. And I'm reading this on Deacon Illustrated. So when he was initially reported to be leaving Wake Forest, which wasn't more than just a week and a half ago. Let's see. I can just read some of this to people. So source told Deacons Illustrated, first reported by Hayes Fawcett, with all 4 years of eligibility remaining, only spent one season with the Deacons and redshirted. Only action was taking 3 snaps at the end of a blowout loss at Miami late in the season. And 5 months ago, Eklinski was seen as Wake's quarterback of the future under Dave Clawson. Wake's previous coaching staff was bringing in Ethan Hampton, a transfer from Northern Illinois, as perceived competition for Eklinski. But Eklinski was thought to have a bright future. Clawson resigned about 2.5 weeks after the season ended. Jake, is it Dickert? How you pronounce his last name?
Yes.
Comes over from Wazoo. That brought about a different offensive system, and Robbie Ashford, Deshaun Purdy. And let's see here. After Saturday's scrimmage, it was made clear by Dickert that the Demons' passing game needs work, barring Wake Forest adding another transfer quarterback before the start of fall camp. Ashford and Purdy will be in a 2-man battle for the starting job before Kennesaw State on August 29th. Portal window runs until the 25th this week, of course. So, I don't know about other than. It sounds like he was maybe even a fringe 4-star coming out of high school initially.
Listen to Robbie Ashford's journey. Baseball player in addition to football. Oregon, Auburn, South Carolina, now Wake.
Yeah, I mean, it's college football nowadays. I say that in so many videos. I say, well, this is just how it is now. When will I stop saying that, Mark? Do I just have to stop saying that?
Yeah, because we're at some point going to just all know this is the way it is now. We don't need to point it out.
Well, I sometimes have to feel like I have to apologize for people. Like, well, this is how it is. Because I say, well, do they have enough money for this kid? And people are like, I hate you for saying that. It's like, well, that's how it is. Whether you like it or not, they have to have the money. And guys want to know that they have a chance to play. You can only play one quarterback, or at least that's where most places you only play one quarterback. So
I sized up the Nico class, which is 2023, against his competitors to see, okay, how does this look a couple years later? Nico being the number 2 quarterback in the nation to Arch Manning. 8 of the top 20 are still with their original teams.
Yeah, and David brings up that this new analyst, remember, he did come from Wake Forest. So there's somebody I haven't spoken with either. We'll get a chance to talk to him before fall camp. But there's a connection there, I'm guessing, even though I don't know when he was at Wake. I'm assuming he was part of the previous staff.
And of course, Corey, before we bid goodbye, Iowa fans are going to get a look at an Hawkeye that for me, this is the most surprising personnel move of the offseason, because I thought more of John Nestor and his future at Iowa. But again, Iowa fans will see him in enemy colors this year.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I when he entered the portal, not that guys don't have to stay out. I mean, this whole idea that you can't transfer within the conference. I mean, Price Sanford, Iowa basketball, just transferred from Iowa to Nebraska. I mean, does that make him the enemy? I'll root against him, I guess. I don't hate the kid for it. That's just how it is. I'm going to root against him when he plays Iowa. But John Nestor ends up at Minnesota. It's a weird situation. So his dad got hired after John Jr. got the scholarship at Iowa. He's there about a year. And then West Branch, which is just outside of Iowa City, hired his dad as their head coach. It sounds like his dad, John Sr., has had a lot of head coaching jobs. And there was some drama there. Let's just say that. He resigned, and it wasn't more than a couple months later that John Nestor Jr., entered the transfer portal. And I thought there was some scuttle that maybe he would end up back closer to family. I guess he's got family down in Tennessee. Maybe that was what I heard as well. He ends up in Minneapolis for the Gophers. So I don't know why that didn't work out. Guys transfer for a number of reasons. It's not always just playing time. It's not always just because they're not getting paid enough. Do you really think John Nestor is going to Minnesota, Mark, because they're paying him more than Iowa? I really don't think that's probably what it is. But they took him, and I'm not surprised by that. I think, and I've mentioned this on videos, Mark, they're going to be more, we're seeing it at Iowa, they're going to be more and more young players that jump in the portal regularly than you would ever expect. Not because of family situations, not because of necessarily money, but because of opportunity. And some people may think that's reverse logic. Well, why wouldn't you stick around? You're not even giving it enough time to see if you're competitive. But a lot of these young athletes, I think, are going to be looking at situations. Maybe that's what happened with John Nestor. Maybe that's what happened with Gavin Hoffman. Hey, Gavin Hoffman just committed to Missouri. Okay. Gavin Hoffman comes here, is here a year, doesn't sniff the depth chart, but he was a 4-star out of high school. What does he do? He jumps in the portal, immediately gets high major attention. He transfers to Missouri. So he doesn't like what he sees here. He doesn't like what's happening, some way, shape, or form. John Nestor apparently the same. And they think, well, why sit here and waste years of eligibility? I'm still young enough. It's like drafting a young athlete, and a franchise is looking at the future, saying, "Hey, this guy is, was a year or two removed from being a high major recruit, and he's got these years of." More schools will take you, I think. Especially Power 4 schools will be willing to make that investment in someone, whether it be financial or just for a scholarship spot on the roster, if you have 3 to 4 years of eligibility remaining. So that may be what's happening with a lot of these young guys.
And think of it this way as well. These athletes think a lot of themselves, right? That's one of the reasons why they've achieved well. They've, number one, been told at every stage of their athletic career that they're the best, because most likely they are the best in their hometown and up through the ranks. Number two, to play at this kind of level, you have to be confident. Therefore, and have to think highly of themselves. And based on my interaction with coaches, they have told me athletes generally, yes, overrate themselves.
Yep.
And therefore, if things are not working out from a depth chart standpoint where you are, you've got to be thinking with that type of mindset, things have to be better somewhere else. Somebody out there has to see my talent, and there has to be a better situation for me elsewhere.
Yeah. So that could be what's happened with Nestor and with Hoffman. And now Joey Van Wetzinga, I don't know if we talked about him. He entered the portal here, I think, a week and a half ago. Joey Van Wetzinga was a pretty well thought of recruit from in-state. His younger brother, Rusty, transferred out, went to Central Michigan during the offseason. And I think that's where Joey's going to end up. And I just saw earlier today, Joey has scheduled a visit with Central Michigan. So apparently those two are pretty close. And he even cited his brother's departure from the program when he announced he's entering the portal. So, and he's young. I mean, he just got here. This is his first year, and he's already in the portal. So circumstances change. Maybe I shouldn't say I'd be shocked if Hank. Should I be shocked if Hank Brown enters the portal tomorrow, or if Jimmy Sullivan enters the portal? This is the new college football, Mark. That's what it is.
You can follow us on X, each one of us. And I guess I'm just outlining that we've got a nice little new background right here. So we've got Corey's handle right there. You can see it from the Hawkeye, and then myself, Mark Rogers, VOCFB. If you're on Twitter/X, you might as well follow each one of us. All right, folks, do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Corey, when is the next time you are live, or anything else that you have displayed on your channel?
Yeah, I mean, I actually missed a day. So, I mean, we've since we started the off season in March, I have been posting content basically every day, which you may say that's nothing, because I know your team is just, well, yeah. I remember one of our earlier streams, I remember going back and reading the comments and seeing somebody comment how you were just a machine. Like, because you posted some Iowa video with us at like 2 a.m, and this guy's like, "Man, Mark, you are a machine." I always remember that quote. I'm like, well, Mark's a machine, so that's what he is. But anyways, I am not a machine, but I've been posting content basically every day since the end of the offseason, because it's amazing the amount of news with the 3 major sports. And I actually skipped a day over the weekend. I skipped a day. And so, but we posted the video about the long snapper. We got that out, posted a video late last night. Iowa basketball got a major recruiting win from a Robert Morris transfer, who is Horizon League Player of the Year, got him in. So that'll be huge for McCollum's new roster and that new program. But we'll post more content. We'll have probably a video up tonight, and we'll get a podcast here, interview podcast with we'll start to get some athletes back on the channel here in the coming days as well. But lots to come, and I'm sure we'll have a Hawkeye hangout. It's weird not having the live shows. I mean, this is the first year where we've had nonstop football, men's basketball, and women's basketball. I mean, the football show and the men's basketball show, they're, 3-4 years old. But to have Kashin all year was a treat. But it's weird not having those live streams all the time. But hey, the season will be back quicker than we want.
No doubt about that. And I made mention of the playoff format and that being reviewed here, folks. I believe just in the couple minutes before Corey jumped on here and we started the show, I have concocted in my mind a best possible, not perfect, but best possible way to get the 16 best teams that also earn their way into the playoffs. So I think I'm going to get that down as some kind of playoff format proposal from the Voice of College Football. So we'll probably post that the next couple days. All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Check out Corey's work, of course, and we will see you back here next Tuesday.